Here we go. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. Today is February 2nd, 2026, day 157 of the bulk. I'm currently sitting at around 200 pounds. And here we go. I'm back with another video. The last video, the full day of eating, was very successful. It was a very fun video to make. I'll definitely be running it back. But basically today, what I want to go back to is a little bit more of talking about the framework of bulking and how to have a successful bulk. This is currently my second bulk that I've ever done, like second serious bulk where I've actually, tracked calories, tracked my workouts, things like that. And, I've learned a lot of things over the past few years. I've learned a lot of things over this bulk, throughout this duration of this bulk, and mistakes that I've made from the first one. So what do I want to talk about today? Specifically today, I want to talk about the mistakes that I made during my first bulk. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Even the pro bodybuilders that you see online, even the big influencers, nobody's perfect. Nobody can have a perfect bulk, a perfect cut, anything like that. Everyone makes mistakes. I personally have made some big mistakes during my first bulk. And today I'm going to present to you the 3 biggest mistakes that I made so that you don't repeat those mistakes. But, like I always say, mistakes, even such big mistakes to make during your bulk or during your cut or whatever, just in general, in terms of lifting or in terms of life, they're not necessarily a bad thing. Mistakes, it sounds cliche, but you learn from mistakes. Learning from mistakes is really the best way to learn. The best way to learn is by trying things, messing up, and then, not doing those same things that you just messed up. It sounds cliche to say, mistakes are where you learn, but that's really how it is. So let's get into it, right? The first mistake that I made was being too aggressive with the calorie jump. What does that mean? Let's say my calories, for argument's sake, let's make it easy. Let's say 3,000 calories is your maintenance calories. If you're going to start a bulk, like 3,000 calories, let's say you're 180 pounds. If you're going to start a bulk, you should start at about 200 to 300 calories in a surplus. So that's your 3,000 plus about 200, 300 on top of it, so that you're in a clear caloric surplus. So let's say you start the bulk on 3,200, 3,300 calories, around there. Last year, when I did my bulk last winter, my biggest mistake was I immediately jumped into probably like a 500, 600 calorie surplus. And I came off the back of a cut. So basically overnight, I jumped my daily calories by like 1,000 or even like 1,200. Big mistake. Why is that? First of all, if you're eating 200 to 300 calories in a surplus, you're still in a surplus. So you're still going to gain, you're going to gain weight, you're going to gain strength, you're going to gain muscle. You don't need to automatically jump to 500, 600 calories over or anything bigger than that, because at that point, you're not using those calories effectively. The biggest thing about a bulk is trying to gain as much muscle as possible while gaining as little fat as possible. Yes, you are going to get fat during a bulk. Well, yes, you are going to gain a little fat during a bulk. As little as possible is the goal. Gaining muscle is the most important part. So by jumping so quickly with your calories to such a drastic surplus, you are increasing the chances that you're going to gain a lot of fat. You're going to get really fluffy, as opposed to building muscle with as little fat as possible. So what should you do? That's a big mistake that I made. What should you do? You should jump 200 to 300 calories in a surplus, like I said. You don't need to jump 500, 600. It may seem cool to be like, yeah, I'm bulking. Let me just start eating whatever. Let me start eating 4,000 calories off the rip. Absolutely not. This bulk, I started on 3,400 calories because my maintenance is around 3,000 to 3,100-ish. And now that I'm, almost 6 months deep into the bulk, more than 6 months deep into the bulk, I have slowly increased my calories to whereas now I'm eating 4,200, which is a lot. But last year, off the jump, I was eating 4,000. So it's okay to build up to that big calorie number, like 4,000 plus, whatever suits your maintenance, but not off the rip. That's the most important thing. So moving on. Second thing is I've done a whole video on progressive overload and workout splits before. Second biggest mistake is not focusing enough on progressing on lifts within the 6 to 8 rep range. What do I mean by that? What I did in the past was, yes, I focused on progressive overload during my bulks. However, I wasn't focusing on the rep range 6 to 8 reps. I was focusing on pretty much, I would say, as high as 10, even 12 reps. Let's say in this position last year, let's say I did incline Smith, let's say 195 for 10 reps. I would be doing, or let's say I would do 8 reps. I would try to get to 10 reps before increasing the weight. But that's really not the best way to go about it. The best way to go about it is keep within the 6 to 8 rep range. Sometimes I will go as low as 5. Let's say like I was gonna go for 6, but I only got 5. It is what it is. Or I'll go as high as 9 because maybe I got plus 2 reps or I slightly underestimated, something like that. But 6 to 8 rep range is generally where you should be at. Let's say I'm going to do 6 reps of incline Smith 205 this week. Let's say next week I get 7. The week after I get 7 again. I didn't progress. It's okay. The week after I get 8. After I get 8 reps, I'm going to say, okay, next week. So I'm doing 205 for 8. So next week I should go up to 215 and I'll get 6. Right? That's the general idea of progressive overload. But the number one mistake that I made was I was doing rep ranges as high as 10 or even 12 reps. Especially on some leg movements. I remember hack squats, I was doing 10, 11 reps on certain heavy sets when I really should have been going like maybe even 50 pounds heavier in the 6 to 8 rep range. But, that's a more training side of a bulking mistake. But like I said, training on the bulk and gaining strength is probably, or progressively overloading, is probably one of the most important factors of the bulk. So now we got one nutrition factor and one strength factor. What's the third thing? The third thing is not realizing the importance of meal timing. Meal timing cannot be overstated how important it is. Last year, my biggest mistake that I made was I would have a big ass meal. Let's say I would come home from school, big ass meal, like over 1,000 calories meal of, let's say 250 grams of rice, a lot of chicken, a lot of beef, some carbs, something like that. And then an hour later, I would be in the gym, either warming up or training already. I've spoken about this in another video, but if you're gonna have a big ass meal before you work out, which you should, at least an hour and a half before. Ideally 2 hours, maybe even 2.5 hours before, because you need to let that food digest. It's important to have big ass meals on the bulk, and of course it is. You need to eat food. And it's important to have a big ass meal before you work out, but not necessarily an hour before. An hour and a half, is pushing it. 2 hours is perfect, I would say. You need to let that food digest. Not only are you supposed to keep in mind the meal timing of, let's say a big meal that you're having, especially if that meal consists of protein and fats. When you're consuming protein and fats or even slow digesting carbs, what it's going to do is, like it says, it's going to slow your digestion. And you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be eating a crazy amount of protein and fats within even like an hour and a half, 2 hours of your workout. So if you're going to have a classic meal of rice and meat, let's say chicken and rice, beef and rice, whatever, you want to have that about 2 hours before so you have enough time to digest. In addition to that big ass meal, I did not realize the importance of carb timing with simple, fast digesting carbs. 30 minutes before your workout, you want to just, sounds crazy, but you want to just go ham with the fast digesting carbs. I'm talking rice cakes, honey, fruits, Rice Krispies, Nutri-Grain bars, even to an extent, like some kind of candy, like something fast digesting carb like that's going to help you fuel your workout. And you want to do that 30 minutes before, or even like 20 minutes before your workout. Last year, I didn't realize the importance of that. I would do a big ass meal full of protein, full of fats, full of slow digesting carbs like rice. I would do it an hour before and then I go train. And it's definitely not effective. It's not an effective use of that food. It's important to have these meals, but timing the meals is the most important thing. So let's recap the 3 main points. First of all, being too aggressive with the calories. Probably the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake that people make is being too aggressive with the calories. And what does that lead to? It leads to excessive fat on the bulk, which you want to keep to a minimum, right? Second, not focusing enough on progressing within the 6 to 8 rep range. Now, to an extent, this is a little bit subjective because, people train different ways. But the way that I like to train and the type of training that I promote, 6 to 8 rep range is where it's at. Go heavy, go hard, low volume, high intensity training. Take each set to failure. Go crazy with the weight, That's simply what it is. And last but not least, the meal timing and not realizing the importance of fast digesting carbs. 3 big mistakes that are going to lead to you having a less successful bulk. And as long as you get these 3 in check and you're eating properly and you're in the right mindset, you should be good. Now, one more thing to mention. I've mentioned this in my first video that I ever did, was talking about not overeating on the bulk, which is definitely ties in with the first point that I said of being too aggressive with the calories. If you're too aggressive and you start overeating from the start, or you do a crazy cheat day where You eat 6,000 calories for no reason, even though you're bulking on 3,500. It's going to lead to excessive fat. And over time, it's going to add up if you do multiple of these cheat days. That's definitely having, not overeating on the bulk, which sounds crazy, but it does take discipline. It definitely ties in with the first point that I said of being too aggressive with the calories. So those are the three main points of mistakes that I've previously made on the bulk, and I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to them. So do not do these mistakes. Learn off of me. This bulk, I have to say, has been far, far more successful than the previous one. For reference, I'm about 198 to 200 pounds right now. Last year, at the same weight, my strength was nowhere near. And in retrospect, I looked a little softer back then, you know, even though I still look soft right now. But it's part of the game, you know. For example, last year on incline dumbbell press at about this body weight, I was doing 75s for 8 reps. I'm doing 85s for 8 now at the same body weight. And you know, 10 pounds in each arm on incline dumbbell. If you go heavy on incline dumbbell, you know how much of a difference that is. You know, in this video, right after this is going to be some clips from today's push day, where I'm going to attempt to throw the 90s for the first time. In my head right now, I'm sitting here, I'm hoping for 6 reps. 7 would be amazing, but you know, it's going to be difficult. The first time I'm touching the 90s in my life. But like I said, some push day clips, which I'm about to go in the gym, get it done. I just had my big ass meal about 2 hours before the workout. About to go get the fast digesting carbs in the system and go and smash push. So you will see some of the clips from there. And yeah, that's it. You know, 3 mistakes of the bulk. Now, this year I'm hopefully not making those mistakes. So let's go smash it. Yeah, just a quick editor's note here. I'm noticing how this rep went up so weirdly. The right arm went up much faster than the left. Like, it's just funny to see it, but, you know, still got it up. Another editor's note. Finally, I progressed on lateral raises. Took about a month, but I got +1 rep. But, you know, almost doing the stack, so let's go. There we go. Done, dusted, finito. Push day is complete. I know I didn't show as much as the workout as usual, but, you know, it was a little more packed in there, so I decided to, like, you know, keep it on the low. But basically, 2 good sets of pressing at the start with the 90s on the top set. I only got 5 reps, and the last one, you know, I barely went up. The right went up faster than the left, which is crazy, but I was hoping for 6, to be honest, at least. But, you know, It is what it is. Last time I got 85s for 8. This time I went up to 90s and I got 5. It is what it is. Like I said earlier in the video, if I get 5 sometimes, or if I get 9 sometimes, it is what it is. I'm outside that 6 to 8. Not the end of the world. But as long as you're going hard, as long as you're progressing, and, you know, I'm sure that next week I'll get back to it. But, you know, the question is, how much more am I going to push this bulk? How much more am I going to do? Over 150 days now that I've been bulking, put on a lot of pounds, a lot of muscle, a lot of strength gained. But, you know, it's too fun to stop. The strength gains are too addicting, so I'm going to keep going, you know? I'm going to keep pushing the food. It's getting difficult to get in the calories in. But I really want to get a few more, maybe 5, 10 more pounds, something like that. And then I'll start thinking about cutting down for a short period of time. Definitely not too long of a cut, because I want to keep the strength that I've gained. But I'm going to keep pushing this bulk a little more, at least another 6 weeks. I'm confident that I can do at least another 6 to 8 weeks, which, like I said, it's going to be difficult, but there you go. You know, and I'm sure that there's things that I'm doing right now that are not the best way to do it, which I'm going to learn from my mistakes, like I was talking about earlier in the video. You know, I learned on this bulk from my first bulk, and I'm sure that on my next bulk, I'm going to learn from the one that I'm currently in. So that's all it is. You know, this video, a few sets from the push day and some tips at the start about mistakes that I made when bulking that you should not make. So like I said, that's it for this video. Please do be sure to let me know in the comments if there's any other video ideas you guys would want me to do. You know, I'm sure I'll do another full day of eating some point in the future. You know, especially maybe like peak bulk once I up the calories, something like that. Or, you know, or I could even show you guys like an occasional cheat day, or if I get food outside, you know, something like that. But anything you guys want to see, let me know for sure. I love talking about the gym. I love talking about bulking and my experiences, and I'm happy that I can share it. And hopefully you could take some of that knowledge and, you know, apply it to your own training. And as always, I'm always open to knowledge. So if you think any criticism, any questions, any advice for me as well, please be sure to let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to get to it. So thanks again for watching.